The grand hall of the alien palace stretched higher than the tallest human building, its walls made of a strange crystal that shimmered in colors no human eye could name. Light bounced from every surface, creating patterns that danced like living creatures. At the center, on a throne carved from pure starlight crystal, sat Queen. She was magnificent, her scales glowing faintly in silver and violet, her eyes deep pools of wisdom and sorrow. But tonight, the Queen did not seem magnificent. Tonight, she seemed heavy with disappointment, as if centuries of hope had been crushed under the weight of despair. "Is there no one brave enough to give me strong?" she asked, her voice echoing through the hall like the whisper of distant stars. The question was not merely a complaint, it carried the weight of generations, the desperate cry of a dying line. People, once fierce and strong, had grown weak over centuries. Illnesses that had never troubled them now spread quickly. Younglings were fragile, their bodies delicate and brittle. The royal bloodline, once proud and unbroken, teetered on the edge of extinction. The council of nobles shifted uncomfortably in their seats, avoiding her gaze. Some looked away entirely, pretending to study the intricate carvings of the floor. Others whispered quietly, their words carried away by the vast hall before reaching her ears. Every face showed the same truth: fear. Fear of failure, fear of the Queen's judgment, and fear of the challenge she had set. None had dared step forward in generations. None had the courage or the strength to meet her demand. Outside the hall, a cold wind blew across the obsidian plains, rattling the tall crystal spires of the palace. His voice rang louder, stronger, carrying across the vast room. "My children deserve to be strong. My deserve life. Who will stand for them?" Silence. Then, from the far shadows, a figure emerged. Human. Small compared to the towering nobles, with skin pale against the alien light and eyes bright with determination. Elias, a visitor from Earth, had wandered far from his home in search of knowledge and adventure. He had never dreamed of facing a queen whose very presence could command fear in the bravest warriors. Yet something inside him stirred, a mixture of courage, empathy, and the strange human stubbornness that had allowed his species to survive countless disasters. He stepped forward, boots echoing softly on the crystal floor. "I will," he said, his voice surprisingly steady despite the pounding of his heart. "I will give you strong." A ripple of shock ran through the hall. Heads turned sharply. Gasps filled the air, followed by whispers of disbelief. A human? A single, frail human dared to speak where centuries of alien warriors had faltered. Herself leaned forward slightly, her eyes narrowing, studying him. She saw no arrogance. She saw no foolish pride. Instead, she saw bravery, the quiet, unassuming kind that humans carry deep within them. "You," she asked, her voice a mix of incredulity and curiosity. "You claim you can do what none of my strongest have dared." Elias swallowed, feeling the weight of the room press down on him. He could see the nobles shifting, some laughing quietly, others looking pale and alarmed. I do not know if I can," he admitted honestly. "But I will try, for your people, for the future, for your—" For the first time in decades, his lips curved in something like a smile, faint and fragile. She had grown used to empty words, to excuses cloaked in fear. But this human, this small, strange creature had something different. A spark that refused to be extinguished, a courage that was simple yet unshakable. The Queen rose from her throne, the hall falling silent under the sheer force of her presence. "Then you shall have your chance, human. Prove that your courage is more than words. Show me that hope is not lost." Elias nodded, feeling fear and determination mix in a strange fire inside him. The nobles murmured nervously, sensing that something unprecedented was about to unfold. Turned back to the balcony above the hall, staring into the distance at the stars that shone beyond her palace. In those stars, she saw the possibility of life renewed, a future that once seemed impossible. And for the first time in many, many years, hope stirred in her heart. The hall was still, the echoes of Queen's challenge lingering in the air. Every noble present had felt the tension, the impossible weight of her words. They had expected silence, perhaps a polite refusal, but instead a human had stepped forward. The small figure of Elias, so ordinary in appearance, seemed almost impossibly courageous. He stood straight, shoulders squared, eyes fixed on the Queen, as if nothing in the galaxy could shake his resolve. Studied him carefully. Her instincts, honed over centuries, told her that humans were unpredictable, impulsive, and stubborn beyond reason. Many species found them fragile, yet there was an undeniable vitality hidden within. She could sense it now, the spark that had allowed humans to survive where others had fallen. And in that spark, she glimpsed the possibility her people so desperately needed. "You speak boldly, human," she said, her voice soft but edged with authority. "Do you know what you offer? This is no simple task. Many have tried and failed. Many have been broken by the demands of my people." Elias nodded, his jaw firm. "I do not know what the outcome will be," he admitted honestly. "But I will not turn away. I have traveled far and learned much. I know the value of life, the strength of courage, and the need to act when others hesitate. If my people can endure, if I can endure, then perhaps your line can continue." A murmur ran through the hall. Aliens were not used to such humility and determination together. Most were proud, seeking glory in their accomplishments. Elia's words were different. They carried sincerity and understanding, a rare combination in the galaxy. Some of the nobles whispered in disbelief. Others exchanged worried glances, unsure whether this human could survive what lay ahead. Leaned forward on her throne, her expression serious. "And what if your courage fails? What if your strength is not enough? Can you accept the consequences, human?" Elia's eyes met hers without flinching. "If I fail," he said quietly, "then I will have done my best, but I will not fail because I did not try. I will give everything I have to ensure the survival of your people. That is my promise." The Queen was silent for a long moment, studying him. There was something about the simplicity of his words, the honesty in his eyes, that struck a chord deep within her. Generations of her ancestors had demanded strength and action from others, yet so often found only hesitation. But this human, he did not hesitate. He had not been intimidated by her power, nor by the fear that haunted her court. He had chosen to act. "Very well," she finally said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. "If you are to prove yourself, you must undertake the trials of strength and endurance. These are not games. They are ancient tests designed to reveal one's true spirit, to measure courage, resilience, and determination. Many have tried, many have failed." Elia's heart pounded, but he nodded. "I understand. I will face them." Rose from her throne, and the hall seemed to bend around her as she descended to the floor. Her presence was overwhelming, yet in that moment she did not intimidate him. Instead, it inspired him. "Know this, human," she said, her voice lowering to a whisper meant only for him. "If you succeed, you will give life to hope itself. You will change the future of my people forever. If you fail, the consequences will be grave. Choose your courage wisely." Elias felt the weight of her words settle upon him, heavy but invigorating. He looked around the hall at the towering nobles, the crystalline walls, the endless expanse of the palace beyond. For the first time, he realized the true scope of what he had volunteered for. This was not just about survival. It was about legacy, about the life of an entire species resting in his hands. And yet, despite the fear that gnawed at him, a fire burned inside Elias, a stubborn human fire. He would not back down. He would endure whatever trials awaited him. Because sometimes courage was not about strength alone. It was about the choice to act when no one else would. The nobles whispered behind their hands, some admiring, some skeptical. But none could deny the truth. This human, small and unassuming, had done what none of them had dared. He had offered himself willingly to the impossible. His eyes softened slightly as she turned to leave. "Prepare yourself, human. Tomorrow your trials begin. May the stars guide your steps, for you will need more than courage. You will need endurance, wisdom, and heart. Only then will the hope of my people be in your hands." Elias watched her go, the weight of destiny pressing on him, yet feeling an unexpected thrill. He had stepped forward when no one else could. The path ahead was uncertain, dangerous, and unlike anything he had ever faced, but for the first time he felt alive in a way he had never known. The first light of the alien sun painted the crystalline palace in hues of gold and violet. Elias stood at the edge of the trial grounds, a vast expanse that stretched as far as the eye could see. The air was thin and sharp, filled with the scent of minerals and ozone. Beyond the gates, the obsidian plains waited, dangerous, merciless, and alive with the ancient energy of world. Appeared beside him, her scales glinting in the morning light. She did not speak, but the weight of her gaze pressed down on him. It was both intimidating and comforting, a silent acknowledgement that this was not a simple test of strength. It was a test of spirit, heart, and determination. "Your first trial is the crossing of the crystal sands," she said finally. "The sands burn like the sun, though there is no flame. They will test your endurance, your patience, and your will to continue when your body demands surrender. Fail here, and the rest will not matter." Elias nodded. He felt fear coil in his stomach, but he pushed it aside. He reminded himself why he had stepped forward in the first place: hope for a dying people, the chance to save an entire line from extinction. With steady steps, he entered the sands. Immediately, the heat pressed against him. Each step sent shocks of pain through his feet. The crystal grains cut like tiny knives, slicing his skin with every movement. His muscles screamed, demanding that he stop, that he give up. Yet he remembered words, and something deep within him refused to yield. One foot in front of the other. One breath. One heartbeat. Keep going. Hours passed. The sun rose higher, then began to sink, yet Elias moved forward relentlessly. Sweat stung his eyes, blood coated his feet, and exhaustion threatened to pull him into unconsciousness. And still, he kept moving. When he finally reached the edge of the sands, his legs trembled violently, his body a tapestry of pain and endurance. But he had survived. He had proven the first of many truths. Human determination was not fragile. It could endure suffering, defy expectations, and push past limits. Approached him silently, her eyes unreadable. She raised a single hand, touching his shoulder. The contact was brief but heavy with meaning. "You have passed the first trial," she said simply, "but this is only the beginning." The second trial awaited in the Hall of Reflections, a place where illusions preyed on fear and memory. As Elias entered, the walls seemed to ripple and shift. Shadows formed into shapes of his greatest failures, moments when he had doubted himself, when he had feared inadequacy. Each illusion whispered, coaxed, and taunted him. "You cannot do this. You are weak. You are nothing." Elias' heart pounded. Memories of Earth, his small victories, his family, his friends flickered in his mind. He clung to them, focusing on the reality he knew, refusing to succumb to the lies around him. Step by step, he moved through the hall, confronting each illusion with courage, acknowledging his fears without letting them dominate him. Finally, he emerged from the hall, exhausted but unbroken. His mind was heavy, his spirit tested, yet he had learned the second truth. Bravery is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. The final trial was the climb to the obsidian spire, the tallest peak in the trial grounds. The wind tore at him, ice bit at his skin, and the spire itself seemed alive, resisting his ascent. Every nerve screamed for rest, but Elias pressed on, thinking of the hope he carried for her people. Hours turned to night, night to the dawn of the next day. Finally, he reached the summit, bloodied, battered, and utterly spent. And as he stood there, looking down at the lands below, he felt something extraordinary. He had endured. He had survived where others would have failed. He had proven that human courage could face the impossible. When arrived at the summit, her expression was unreadable, yet her eyes shone with a rare light, pride, wonder, and hope all mixed together. She did not speak immediately, only extended her hand toward him. Elias took it, and in that simple gesture he understood that he had passed the trials, not just with strength but with heart, resilience, and unyielding courage. The queen's voice broke the silence, soft but full of power. "You have proven yourself human. Your spirit carries hope where none dared tread. Tomorrow we begin the next chapter, the one that will shape the future of my people." Elias looked out over the vast plains, the moon rising above the horizon, and felt a strange calm. He had faced the impossible and survived. Yet deep inside, he knew the journey had only begun. The trials had tested his body, mind, and spirit, but the true challenge, the one that would define history, was still ahead. And for the first time in his life, he welcomed it. After the trials, Elias was alone on a high plateau overlooking the obsidian plains. The wind whipped around him, cold and harsh, carrying with it the scent of distant storms and the strange minerals of his world. His body ached from the climb, his muscles screamed, and his mind felt like it had been stretched thin by every trial he had faced. For the first time since stepping forward in the Queen's hall, doubt settled in his chest like a heavy stone. He sank to the ground, resting against a jagged rock. "What if I can't do this?" he whispered to the empty sky. "What if I fail? What if my courage isn't enough?" His fingers traced the grooves in the crystal beneath him, trying to ground himself, to remember why he had come. Every trial had pushed him to his limits, yet the hardest challenge was still ahead, the one that would decide the future of his people. As the twin moons of the alien world rose, casting silver light across the plains, Elia's thoughts drifted to the Queen. She carried centuries of expectation and hope in her heart, and he had promised to protect that hope. The weight of that responsibility pressed down harder than any physical trial. He had faced scorching sands, illusions that tested his mind, and treacherous cliffs, yet this quiet, gnawing fear was more difficult than anything before. Hours passed. Elias stared at the horizon, watching the colors of the sky shift from silver to deep violet. He thought of his home on Earth, of the life he had left behind, of the people who had shaped him, taught him, and believed in him. A small spark of resolve flickered. Humans were not perfect. They were fragile, prone to fear, and yet they endured. They chose to keep moving forward even when every part of them screamed to stop. He took a deep breath, letting the wind fill his lungs. His eyes focused on the distant palace, its crystal towers glowing faintly in the moonlight. There, waited, not as a ruler demanding obedience, but as a symbol of a future that depended on him. His fear remained, but alongside it grew something stronger: purpose. Courage was not the absence of doubt, he realized. Courage was the decision to act despite it. Slowly, Elias rose to his feet. Every step back toward the palace was heavy, every movement a battle against exhaustion, but he felt a quiet power growing inside him. He remembered the first time he had spoken in the Queen's hall, the moment he had chosen to step forward when no one else dared. That decision had changed everything, and it could change more. When he reached the palace, was waiting at the edge of the balcony, her eyes fixed on him. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she descended, walking toward him with a grace that made the ground seem to hum beneath her feet. She stopped just short of touching him, her gaze soft yet piercing. "You carry a heavy burden, human," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Many would crumble under its weight. I can see it in your eyes, but I also see something stronger than fear. I see the will to endure, to rise even when the odds are impossible." Elias bowed his head slightly, exhaustion evident in his posture. I do not know if I am enough," he admitted, his voice small but honest. "I have never carried a burden like this. What if I fail when it matters most?" Smiled faintly, the motion almost imperceptible. "Then you will have tried," she said. "And trying is the first step toward victory. Courage is not perfection, it is persistence. You have survived trials that would have broken others. Your spirit is what matters most." Something inside Elias shifted. The weight of doubt began to lighten, replaced by a quiet determination. He understood now that fear would always be part of him, but it would not control him. He could still choose to act, to fight, to endure. For the first time since he stepped forward, Elias felt hope, not just for himself, but for the people who depended on him, for the future that could still be saved. He clenched his fists, feeling the fire of human resolve burning bright. And in that moment he made a silent promise. No matter what trials lay ahead, no matter how impossible the path, he would not fail. He would rise again and again until the future was secure. The palace glowed under the soft light of twin moons, their silver beams reflecting off the crystalline walls. Inside, the great hall was quiet, every noble present holding their breath. They had watched Elias endure the impossible, scorching sands, illusions that preyed on his mind, and the deadly climb to the obsidian spire. Now, all eyes were on the final act, the moment that would determine the future of his people. Elias stood at the center of the hall, his body bruised and exhausted, yet his spirit unbroken. He felt the weight of destiny pressing down on him, heavier than the trials, heavier than fear itself. He looked to, who descended from her throne, her presence commanding yet strangely gentle. Her scales shimmered in the moonlight, her eyes deep and unreadable, reflecting both hope and centuries of sorrow. "You have proven yourself human," she said softly, her voice carrying through the hall without raising it. "You have endured what none of my people could. You have faced fear, pain, and doubt, and yet your spirit remains unbroken. Now you stand at the threshold of the most important moment, not for yourself, but for life itself." Elias swallowed hard, his chest tight. He knew this was not simply about strength or courage. It was about trust, connection, and the fragile promise of life. He stepped forward, guided by the human instinct to act when action was needed most. He would honor this responsibility with every part of himself. The alien nobles watched in stunned silence. They had expected fear, hesitation, perhaps even failure, but instead they saw something extraordinary. A human, small and fragile by their standards, stood unwavering. His determination radiated, a silent challenge to centuries of doubt. Extended her hand toward him. Her touch was cool, almost electric, sending a shiver through Elia's body. "We are bound by more than choice, human," she whispered. "We are bound by hope, the hope of generations yet to come. If we succeed, we give my people a future. If we fail, then the line ends here." Elias nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He did not flinch, though his heart raced. He understood that this was more than an act of courage. It was a sacred duty, a moment that carried the life of a species. With steady breath, he reached for her hand. The moment their hands touched, a strange warmth spread through Elias. It was not just physical. It was as if the hope of 1,000 generations flowed through them both, binding them together in purpose. He felt resolve, her centuries of longing, and in that instant he understood the depth of her despair and the brilliance of her hope. The union was solemn and silent, yet charged with meaning. It was not a display of power, nor a ceremony of dominance. It was a mutual pledge, a shared act of courage and trust. The hall seemed to hold its breath, the crystal walls reflecting the intensity of the moment. Even the nobles, who had once doubted him, felt something shift in their hearts. When the union was complete, stepped back slightly, her eyes glistening. For the first time in centuries she smiled, a genuine, fragile, and beautiful expression. Perhaps there is hope yet," she whispered, her voice carrying across the hall. "Perhaps life can endure." Elias, though exhausted, felt a surge of pride and relief. He had stood where no one else dared. He had acted when the world seemed impossible. And now, in this quiet moment, he realized something profound. Courage was not measured in strength or victories alone. It was measured in the willingness to carry the weight of life itself, even when fear threatened to overwhelm. Outside the palace, the twin moons reflected off the crystal towers, casting silver light across the plains. In the quiet of the night, a new hope had been born, not in the form of words, nor in gestures, but in the courage of a single human who chose to act. Turned her gaze to the distant stars, a soft light of anticipation shining in her eyes. Elias, standing beside her, felt the weight of the future settle upon his shoulders, and yet, for the first time, he did not fear it. He had endured the impossible, and together, they had taken the first step toward a legacy that could not be broken. In the silence of the crystal hall, hope breathed again, fragile but alive. And for Elias, the human who had dared, that hope was now a part of him forever. Weeks passed after the union, and the palace had settled into a quiet rhythm. Elias had become a familiar presence in the grand halls, walking amongst people with a cautious curiosity. Though small and human, his presence brought an undeniable shift, a subtle reminder that courage could come from the least expected places. The nobles no longer whispered with doubt. They watched him with a mixture of respect and astonishment. Observed him closely. She noticed the way he moved, careful but deliberate, the way he listened to her people, offering patience and understanding where others might have imposed authority. He carried no arrogance, no false pride. Instead, he carried something far rarer, empathy combined with courage. One evening in the quiet of the royal gardens approached him. The crystal flowers shimmered faintly in the moonlight, their colors shifting as if alive. She stopped a few paces away, her eyes reflecting both vulnerability and hope. "Elias," she began softly, "you have given my people something no one else could. You have endured, persevered, and now you have given us hope. My children, they will be strong because of you." Elias felt a warmth in his chest, a mixture of pride, humility, and awe. He shook his head slightly. "It was never just me," he said. "It was a choice I made. But you, your strength, your courage, your vision, they are what inspired me to act. Without you, I would never have had the resolve to endure." Smiled, a soft and rare expression, as if the centuries of burden had lifted even slightly. She reached out and touched his hand, a gesture of trust and connection. "You have given more than effort, human. You have given life to the dreams of generations. You have carried the future in your hands." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Elias looked at her, realizing the depth of the bond they now shared. It was more than trust, more than partnership. It was a quiet promise that life could continue, that strength could return, that hope could flourish in even the darkest of times. Over the next days, guided Elias through the ancient libraries and sacred halls of her people, sharing stories of past heroes, of failures and victories, of the line that now rested on their choices. Every tale reminded Elias of the responsibility he bore, yet also of the potential he had unlocked. Every whispered legend, every fragile hope, seemed to hum with life as he absorbed it. One night beneath the starlit sky turned to him with a soft, almost shy expression. "Do you understand what you have done?" she asked. "You did not just face trials, human. You faced centuries of despair. You have ignited a spark that may never be extinguished." Elias felt the enormity of her words settle upon him. The trials, the fears, the physical and mental burdens, they had all led to this quiet, profound moment. "I only acted," he said humbly, "because someone had to, because no one else would, and because I believe that even the smallest courage can change the world." His eyes glistened with emotion. She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a whisper meant for him alone. "Your courage has made our children possible. One day they will be strong, unbroken, and full of life. You will see them grow, human. You will witness the future that you helped create." For the first time, Elias allowed himself to feel the depth of what they had achieved. He imagined the children, running through the crystalline halls, their laughter echoing across the palace, their bodies and spirits strong, resilient, unafraid. And he understood that the trials, the pain, the fear, all of it had been worth it. Placed her hand lightly over his heart. "You are part of our line now," she said softly, "and in that you carry hope for everything to come." Elias looked up at the stars, feeling a quiet pride, a deep connection, and a profound sense of purpose. The path ahead would not be easy and the future was still uncertain, but one truth was undeniable. Together, they had given life to hope, and hope was stronger than any fear. And in the silent crystal garden, under the gentle glow of the moons, hope breathed again, fragile but eternal, carried in the courage of a single human who dared to act when no one else would. Years passed, and the palace that had once echoed with fear and doubt now resonated with life and laughter. The crystal walls reflected a soft light, warm and inviting, as if the very structure itself celebrated the hope that had been born within it. Elias, once a visitor from a distant world, had become a part of this alien society, not just a hero, but a guardian of a future that had seemed impossible. The day arrived when bore her child. It was a moment of quiet triumph, a miracle that shimmered brighter than the crystals of the palace. The newborn was strong, vibrant, and filled with a courage that seemed to radiate even in sleep. Its scales glimmered with hints of silver and violet, echoing its own, yet its eyes held a spark of something new, a fire born from the human who had dared to act when no one else would. Elias knelt beside the cradle, his hand brushing gently against the child's small, trembling form. He could feel the life within, the heartbeat that symbolized more than just survival. It was the promise of generations yet to come, the living embodiment of hope. He looked up at, whose eyes glistened with tears that reflected both joy and relief. "They will be strong," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "Strong in body, strong in spirit, and fearless, all because you chose to step forward when no one else would." Elias shook his head, humbled by her words. "I only did what I had to," he said softly. "It was your people, your courage, and your hope that guided me. I only followed where others feared to step." The alien nobles, once skeptical and doubtful, now gathered around, their expressions a mixture of awe and gratitude. They had witnessed the impossible, the survival of a line that had teetered on the edge of extinction. And they knew that it was not the mightiest warrior, nor the cleverest strategist, but a human, small and fragile by their standards, who had changed the course of their history. The child cried, a sharp, clear sound that echoed through the crystal hall, and in that cry there was a sense of triumph and promise. The future had begun, unbroken and bright, carried in the tiny body of a new generation. Elias felt a profound sense of peace and pride. He had faced fear, pain, and exhaustion. He had questioned himself, doubted his own courage, and yet he had endured. And now the reward was not just survival, it was life itself. Placed her hand over Elia's shoulder, her gaze steady and full of unspoken gratitude. "You will see them grow," she said softly. "You will see the strength you helped create, and one day they will honor you, not just for what you did, but for what you inspired. Humanity, you are remarkable." Elias looked down at the child, then around the palace and finally at. In that moment, he understood the full weight of his journey. Courage, he realized, was not about glory or recognition. It was about stepping forward when hope was fragile, when the path seemed impossible, and when the world relied on the smallest act of bravery. The palace doors opened to the outside world, revealing the vast obsidian plains bathed in the soft light of dawn. The air carried a promise, fresh and endless, as if the universe itself acknowledged the courage of one human who dared to act. And as Elias stepped forward into the light, the child cradled safely in his arms, he knew that their legacy would endure. This was more than survival. It was a testament to the power of hope, the endurance of spirit, and the extraordinary strength of humanity. One small human had changed the course of an entire species, proving that courage and determination could overcome fear, weakness, and despair. And as the child's laughter rang through the crystal halls, pure and unrestrained, the palace seemed to shine brighter than ever before. The line of people would continue, strong and fearless, carried forward by the choice of a single, brave human who had stepped forward when no one else dared. In the quiet, under the glow of twin moons, Elias finally allowed himself to smile. The impossible had been achieved. Hope had returned, and the legacy of courage, resilience, and life would echo across generations, carried in the strength of the children yet to come.